things that Mark is passionate about is Mark is very passionate about a paradigm shift and how do we really work with youth today? How do we help address the economic issues that we have, workforce development, and getting kids really striving for that excellence in skills. And Mark is an acclaimed speaker that spoke all over the world. He's syndicated in 51 different countries. He's a best-selling author, and he's a good friend, and I welcome Mark Perna to the stage to share with us a brief message.
How many of you, by a show of hands, would like to unleash passion, purpose, performance in younger generations? As a result of that, how many of you would like to attract and retain more of the right students and employees into the right programs, pathways, and positions for all the right reasons? Show of hands. That's what we're going to spend my time talking about today. I'm even going to define the right student and employee. Anywhere in North America or around the world is that young person today who is motivated, they're dedicated, they see a light at the end of the tunnel for a program, pathway, or position, and they actually want to get there. The light at the end of the tunnel is a simple concept. What does their career or lifestyle look like at the light at the end of their tunnel? The tunnel, that's the time they spend with us in education and employment, right? It's the work, the labor, the effort, the skill development, the academic rigor. It's everything that's necessary for them to feel comfortable taking a step, and then another step, and then another step towards their light at the end of their tunnel, built based on their own unique interests, talents, and abilities. And so we have a challenge in America today. We have way too many young people standing still in the tunnel. I can't speak for the globally how many young people today are standing still in the tunnel, but I have a lot of different countries looking at me today. But around the world, we have far too many young people today who don't see that light at the end of the tunnel, and they're not willing to step forward. They're standing still here for a myriad of reasons. One, maybe they don't see it. Two, maybe they're afraid to take that step. Three, maybe something's holding them back from taking that step. And so what I'm going to talk about in my remarks today is how do we unleash passion, purpose, performance in younger generations? How do we connect, engage, and answer why in their lives so that they understand the power of what we're trying to do here in this building right now today, right? With world skills, the ability to take the best of what they can do and deliver it to something they want meaningful in their life. And so my presentations come with a warning, and my warning is this. I speak at 120 words a minute with gusts to 210. So I move pretty quickly. I'm going to jump right in. There's a changing landscape in education and workforce development, and the sands are shifting as we speak. Said more plainly, the world has changed. We're in a completely different set of circumstances today than we have been for the last year, 5 years, and beyond that. And where the world has changed is I know we're dealing with a tremendous skills gap in America today. We're dealing with this around the world. The skills gap is simply the people who want work, they don't have the skills to be able to do the jobs that are available. Pre-pandemic, here in the United States, sat at 6.3 million open jobs in America in the skills gap. Now it sits at over 11 million open jobs in almost every industry and all levels of education and experience. It's pretty extraordinary what has got us here to this point, and if I were to point it out throughout different industries, and I'm not going to read this all to you, but to simply say aerospace and aviation, they project 3.5 million jobs by 2026 they have to fill. This is just several years away. Construction, 78% of contractors report difficulty finding craftsmen. 71% are struggling to meet their current needs, and 39% have had to turn down work. Cybersecurity, 3.5 million globally need to be filled, and that was at the end of 2021, so just a little bit more than a year, almost a year ago. Healthcare has depleted our nursing and our doctors and our medical staff and our classified staff across healthcare. Looking at manufacturing, 2.1 million here just in America alone by 2030 are needed with a negative impact of just over $1 trillion. Petrochemical industry. A lot of the speeches that I give around the country are to industries, economic development, chambers of commerce, employers, how to attract and retain top talent. I was speaking just east of Houston, and they call it the Great Crew Change. They have one of the largest, or oldest, I should say, populations of employees averaging 50 years old. So as the silver tsunami starts to depart, which are the baby boomers who are leaving, they're having trouble finding people in that industry. Looking at transportation, supply chain, logistics. How many of us, no matter where we are in the world today, buys something in the last 6 months and it took longer to get it than it had previously? So this is where we are in the skills gap, and there's also one in education. And by the way, I don't believe we have a skills gap. I believe we have an awareness gap. I think the awareness gap is that there is an amazing number of things that are possible for young people today, and they simply do not know they exist. And we are sitting here today, and we are showering praise and remarkable things that are going on, even in this skills competition that's going here. And the number of people who are doing extraordinary things in all levels of skills, not just welding, but precision machine, mechatronics, you name it. There's extraordinary talents out there. Yet not enough young people today know what's possible, where they can go, and how they can get there. In education, I call this the educational ecosystem. In America today, we've got administrators, teachers, counselors, and students. And all of these people, and in teachers and counselors, I would put paraprofessionals, special needs folks, etc. Everybody, classified staff. In this ecosystem, it's completely burned out. Everybody is at the end of their bandwidth. And here's the challenge that we have. Because all of this has to connect to our educational system. How education creates the pipeline to employment that ultimately serves economic development and the viability of our communities. And how we pull all of this together. Right now, here's the tipping point we've reached in education in America. No one has time to do any more than they're currently doing. The consequence to that is this. Generation Z, which is 8 to 25 years old, they are in our homes, classrooms, and places of business. As a non-negotiable, they require a human connection to move forward. In education, we no longer have time in most places across America to deliver it. So in lack of human connection, with a group of people who require as a non-negotiable, a human connection, we have created this tipping point where young people today are a little unruly in school. They're a little feral because they're coming to school looking for some kind of positive connection and human connection. They're not getting it, therefore they act out accordingly. They also don't see the purpose in doing what they're doing in far too many places. I wrote an article at Forbes, and I have 3.3 million readers at Forbes. I wrote it on January 4th called Why Education is Reaching a Crisis of Epic Proportions, on how we have to clear things off the plates of our teachers, our administrators, our counselors, etc., in our educational systems to build the human connection necessary to start telling a very powerful story about what's possible, how young people today can build a tremendous competitive advantage. Because part of where the world has changed, what has also changed is what it takes to create a competitive advantage in the minds of a young person, in the bodies of a young person. That competitive advantage takes three things. The first of these three things is robust academic knowledge. Well, that seems pretty obvious, right? Our academic systems across the globe were designed to deliver and build academic knowledge. And there was a time where you could have just robust academic knowledge. In fact, the more robust academic knowledge you had, the more what you would make? Money, right? But some of us are a little bit older. Remember the stair steps? If you had this much education, you made this much, you made this much, you made this. Here's where the world has changed. That's no longer necessarily true. It's not necessarily untrue, it's just not necessarily true either. You now have to have two critical things. Enter what you're doing here today. This first of these two things is technical competencies. Those things you can do with your head and in your hands, right? So whether you want to be a surgeon or an accountant, whether you want to be a welder or a programmer, whether you want to be an auto tech or in biotechnology, you have to have the technical competencies to do it in the world today as it sits. The third and probably most important is professional skills. Things like work ethic, punctuality, leadership, communication, work-life balance, stress management, critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, networking, flexibility. These things are significantly important in young people today, and we're trying to instill them in high school when we should be instilling them in elementary school to middle school to high school and then on to whatever positive placement. And this is how we have to move forward because the landscape in education workforce development, or what I like to refer to as workforce education, has to change and pivot in order to be able to accomplish this. The Wall Street Journal here in America did a survey of CEOs, hiring managers, and human resource executives. And what they found was that 92% of them said they value professional skills over academic knowledge and technical competencies. 89% said they're the hardest things for them to find. But this is where we sit in America today. See, I think we have an awareness gap that has created the inability for us in far too many parts of the country to build and help young people see a competitive advantage. What you're doing here in this world skills competition is the ability to raise the level of awareness for young people today to see something extraordinary possible in their life. Robust academic knowledge applied to technical competencies, professional skills that will allow them to adapt to whatever the world throws at them. One of the biggest changes is the young people themselves. I want to give you just a quick glimpse from a 10,000-foot view of young people. I call the younger generations in America today the Y generation, W-H-Y generation, because quite frankly, they need an answer to that question for everything they do. For everything they do. So maybe an aha moment it is when I travel North America, but when you ask a young person in your sphere of influence, either in your home, classroom, or place of business to do something, and they look back at you and they say, well, why should I do it that way? Most of us take that as a smart aleck response. And we give the all-American response back, which of course is, you have played this game before. Here's the aha. Most young people do not view it. They are not smart alecks as a smart aleck response. The way they view it is this. You know what? I am unique. I'm special. I'm important. I'm intelligent. I'm resourceful. I know how to use technology. Why do we do it this way? Because there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a way to put it in the cloud. There has to be a way to use Google something. There has to be a way to get a bigger impact, and yet we cut their knees out from underneath them and we don't give them the opportunity to try. See, I go completely the other way than most people about young people. Most of us have heard that young people in this country are lazy and they're entitled. Don't believe it for a minute, I go completely the other way. I think the most extraordinary generations to come down the pike. I think they are the most intelligent, resourceful, and pit bull-like generations that we have ever seen in this country. In fact, when they see a want to in their life, something they truly want, they will move heaven and earth to get to that want to. Our challenge as parents, educators, employers around the world is getting them to want something. That's where the battlefield of the future is. And so we have to be able to connect these dots. We have to recognize the power that if the want to is strong enough, the how to will come. Their want to has to be strong enough with a view at a light at the end of the tunnel that they are willing to show up every day and take a step. Light at the end of the tunnel is a simple concept. What does their career and lifestyle look like? Anything they want fits in lifestyle. And real quick, just as an audience, do this for me. I'm going to ask you two questions. Please just shout up the answer as fast as you can. Between the words lifestyle and career, which one of these words is most important to young people today?
Lifestyle.
What do we spend all our time talking about?
Careers.
Is that an aha moment for any of you? Almost every decision a young person makes today is based on how it affects their lifestyle. Career has become a lifestyle decision. Therefore, if you want to start any substantive conversation with anyone in your sphere of influence, home, classroom, or place of business, don't start with career, start with lifestyle. Two questions I love to ask the people in my sphere of influence. What do you love to do and what do you do well? What do you love to do and what do you do well? Because that will lead you to a myriad of conversations about lifestyle that builds relevance to a career conversation. Skills and the ability to create a competitive advantage will be directly tied to their ability to see a lifestyle on this spectrum that they want to shoot for. There are those on this end of the spectrum who want to be millionaires. There are those on this end of the spectrum who want just 2 hot meals a day. And then, of course, there's everything in between. So until you know the story behind their eyes, we cannot connect the power of the skills we're trying to teach around the world and how important it is to close the awareness gap to get people into positions that allow us to build the world we are trying to get to. And in order to do that, we have to recognize the power of lifestyle in the career conversation that allows us to move forward. I came up with a concept 8 years ago called education with purpose, and that has to lead to employment with passion. It's become a movement. And education with purpose is simply this, that I believe every piece of education anywhere in the world has to be education that has purpose. Now I realize as adults, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Mark, of course education has purpose. I'm not talking about education with purpose from our perspective. I mean education with purpose from the learner's perspective, the person working on the skills, the person working on academic rigor, the person trying to accomplish something meaningful in their life. Education with purpose must be from their position. And right now in America, we have far too many young people who don't know what that purpose is. That education with purpose creates a pipeline into employment with passion that allows us then to ultimately serve our economic development, for the viability of our communities, wherever we're from. And so all of that is how we connect this together. But in education with purpose, there are two purpose modes. The first one is what I call active purpose. For young people today who are extraordinary, the ones who are in active purpose show up every day to do the work. They're the ones who are here competing in the skills competition. They're the ones that David told me about all over the world that are going on in this period of time, that are all kinds of different skills in competitions. These are the ones who are in active purpose. These are 6 adjectives I put on here. You could add to this list. But they show up every day, right? They're stepping down the tunnel. They say, show me the next thing. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get the work done. On the other side of it, there are those in static purpose. Static purpose simply means they're standing still in the tunnel. They just don't see it. Maybe something's holding them back. Maybe they're afraid. They're standing still in the tunnel. And in America, we are spending billions and billions of dollars to simply get young people to survive school. This is a tragedy. We can no longer afford to do that in America, none the rest around, not to mention around the world. So we can no longer afford to do that. We have to connect the dots and transition young people today from static purpose to active purpose, where they become part of the solution at driving towards something meaningful in their life, but you have to do it in the backdrop of what is their lifestyle goals and wants. We cannot take someone who wants 2 hot meals a day and get them to think you can do something extraordinary in your life, because let's face it, if you want 2 hot meals a day, even though I think we need to clear the road, give them every opportunity possible so that they can accomplish anything in their life, but at the end of the day, they only want 2 hot meals a day. And our challenge is, at least in America, we're trying to overcome systemic poverty by telling someone who wants 2 hot meals a day that they can accomplish anything, which may be true, and it should be true, and we have to clear and make this possible. But at the end of the day, I only want 2 hot meals a day. So what we should commit ourselves to is, how do we help that person get 2 hot meals a day? Because what happens when you get and you achieve that goal for a long enough period of time? Maybe I can have 3 hot meals a day. Maybe then I can take the next step. Maybe the next day I can do this, or the next month, or the next year. Maybe I can see where I can use these skills to build a competitive advantage. Applied academic knowledge, technical competencies, professional skills to be able to move forward. One of my favorite quotes is from Plutarch around 100 AD. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. I love the fact that I'm even showing this in the headquarters of Lincoln Electric. Well, because I just think it's powerful, because you are in the spark business. Create sparks as your resting pulse, but a fire to be kindled. In a reflective way, I'd love to ask all of you here, wherever you're from, in American education, in world education, in community education, are we largely trying to fill vessels, or are we kindling flames? Here's where this impacts young people today and our ability to get more of them into skills training, is that you have to do both of these things. But Generation Z is the first generation in history that requires you to kindle the flame before they ever let you fill the vessel. No flame kindling, they're shutting it down. They require a human connection, and through the conduit of that human connection, if I had more time, I would drill down into this. But through the conduit of that human connection is where kindling of the flame comes from in order to be able to fill the vessel. We are frustrated in many parts of America today because we see more and more kids standing still in the tunnel because we keep trying to double and triple down on filling the vessel, but we haven't done a good job of kindling the flame. And that kindling of the flame has to be in the expanse of what's possible, where can they go, how can they get there, and how can they use their academic knowledge, technical competencies, and professional skills to accomplish something extraordinary in their life. Young people today will very rarely, if ever, make forever decisions. Yet we are accidentally trying to put them to that all the time. Sir, what is your name in the blue coat right there? What is your name, sir? Bennett? Yes. Bennett, nice to meet you. If I were to back Bennett up to 16 years old, and we were walking through high school, Bennett's like, yeah, cool, don't do that, no. But if I were to back you up into somewhere, maybe sophomore, junior year of high school, and I walked up to him, and I asked a very benign question. Bennett, just curious, man, how you doing? I hope everything's good. Hey, curious, like, where do you see yourself one day? Like, what do you want to accomplish in your life? Would you all agree I said that very benignly? Right, very safely. That's not what Bennett hears as a 16-year-old self. Young people today in America, you know what they heard? They heard this. So Bennett, what would you like to do with the rest of your life? And he gives the all-American, all-world answer of, I don't know. I have no idea what I want to do, right? And so we have to recognize they will hardly, if ever, make forever decisions, but they will make for now decisions. A for now decision is a decision that lasts a week, a month, a year. To unlock analysis paralysis, the power in the for now decision that allows a young person to see a light at the end of the tunnel and give it a try. See if it's for them. Get to work. See how this starts to play out. Because that's ultimately one day where passion, grit, and stick-to-itiveness comes from. The for now decision is powerful. So to kind of underpin this concept, we have to recognize that young people today, in Generation Z, 8 to 25 years old, they have to see the options and opportunities that are possible. How can they leverage what they are learning to do something extraordinary in their life? To do that, I'm just going to underpin this with what I call a career tree. This is a 6-foot wide, 4-foot high interactive wall graphic at Moore Norman Technology Center in Oklahoma City. This happens to be an example of what's possible through a welding pathway. And I picked that because I am honored to be in the headquarters at Lincoln Electric. And so I picked their welding tree to use as an example today because it's a pretty simple concept and story and narrative. Every program, pathway, or class is the trunk of a tree. That trunk leads to a branch system. The branch system represents all the careers and occupations that are possible as a result of completing the program or pathway. It opens up for young learners today what's possible in a for now decision that allows them to see at all levels of education and experience what's that. Because the challenge with young people today is they don't want to be pigeonholed. They don't want to get into something, find out later it was a mistake, or they're not good at it. They want, in a for now decision, to be able to say, all right, if I complete this welding program, I immediately unlock the entry-level career area. Entry-level is not synonymous with low pay, so it means you can go do those things right now. If I want, though, to unlock a career or occupation through my welding certifications and my welding work that I'm doing, is I can unlock this level with additional certifications, with maybe a 2-year associate's degree, maybe some kind of specialized training, some kind of experience, but I can unlock this level. If I want to unlock the professional careers at the top of the tree, that's just additional education or experience. Maybe it's a 4-year degree, baccalaureate, master's, PhD, MD, JD, whatever it happens to be, but I can go do those things right there. The only difference in the 3 levels is the amount of education or experience it takes to unlock the next level. That's it. Doesn't mean you make more money or that your lifestyle's any better, but it shows an opportunity and a roadmap that through the robust academic knowledge, the technical competencies, and the professional skills being learned, I can now leverage that at many levels of education and experience. It opens up the game and gets us to be more attractive to a great many of the younger generations to see how can they take something like welding or precision machine or mechatronics or construction or whatever it happens to be, and how can I leverage that directly into a career, become an entrepreneur and own my own business? How can I leverage that at different levels of education and experience so that we are playing the game the way young people would like to play it, which is expanding options and opportunities. For any of you that want to deep dive into the younger generations, it's totally optional, but if anyone wants to text Unleash to 33777. I do this for my audiences because no matter where I am, people want to then kind of deep dive into young people. It's just 10 strategies and reflective points for kids in your home, classroom, or place of business. Totally optional, but that's for anybody who wants it. And while you might be taking me up on that, or some of you, I want to tell this story. So I'm working with the mayor's office in Davenport, Iowa, which is right on the Mississippi River. Mayor's office, Chamber of Commerce, economic development, key employers in the area, and their school system, Davenport Community Schools. And I'm working, the folks at John Deere had been inviting me for a very long time to visit their 2.2 million square foot advanced manufacturing facility called Davenport Works. And this was just prior to the pandemic. I said, yeah, we'd love to see it. I went in for a 2.5-hour tour. It was fantastic. And most of you understand what advanced manufacturing looks like today. Most people, however, do not. You guys do that as your rest impulse. So as I was going through, this was me walking in pre-pandemic, and while I was on this particular trip, I ran into an impressive young person. Her name was Megan. She'd been at John Deere for 5 years, and she's 24 years old. And when I meet impressive young people, I love to ask a very simple question. How'd you get here? Like, what's your story? She said, well, I was a sophomore at Davenport West High School in downtown Davenport. She said I was a straight A student, 4.0, honor roll. I was in band, was in chorus, and I sung in a rock band on the weekends. Came time to register for classes junior year. and I decided I wanted to take a welding class. Yeah, Megan's a welder. She says, I took the first class, loved it so much, I took the second, third, fourth, capstone, got all my certifications. Upon graduating from high school, I applied for a welding position at John Deere. To their infinite wisdom, they hired me. She worked there for 12 months. When she took John Deere up on what they offer every employee, which is if you've worked here for 12 months, they will now pay 2/3 of your higher education. She immediately went back to get a 4-year degree in business. John Deere paid for 2/3 of it. She, of course, paid the other third pretty easily. Why? She makes great money. As you know, she's a welder. So here she is, 24 years old, 5 years with the company. She has a tremendous competitive advantage. Why? She's got robust academic knowledge, technical competencies, and professional skills. She also has a 4-year degree in business now. Her college debt, 0. She has now gone from an hourly worker to a salaried worker. She's working herself into a fast-track management program, and it would not surprise me one bit. This impressive young woman one day manages a 2.2 million square foot facility for John Deere. It matters less today where you start after high school. It only matters where you end up. The narrative has to change with young people from 8 to 25 years old because what they are looking for and what resonates with them is different. There is a significant number of young people in America today who could see the value in skills competitions and skill development, but we have to get that word out there. Education with purpose to employment with passion, connecting this through economic development for the viability of our communities. So the call to action in shifting the paradigm is to singing out of the same hymn book, but we must first connect, engage, and answer why for young people in our sphere of influence. We have to do it in this way. We have to connect first through the power of a human connection. We must engage them then and understand what they think, what makes them tick, and how they make decisions. I wish I could deep dive into that today. I don't have the time to do it. But being able to recognize that they think differently, and if we can meet them where they are, validate their circumstances, and empower performance, we will get significantly more young people across the globe into skills training who recognize that they can now use with purpose their education knowledge and combine it now with technical competencies and professional skills to do something extraordinary based on their own unique interests, talents, and abilities. Creating a strong message of value and purpose in the mind and heart of the learner. Getting them to see what's possible, where they can go, and how they can get there. And then connecting the dots ultimately from education with purpose to employment with passion. And I'm going to leave you with this, and I'll turn it back to Jason in a moment. I just love every audience I talk to, I love to leave with my favorite movie line of all time. It's in the movie Apollo 13 back in 1995. My line happens at the beginning of the movie. It's July 20th, 1969, and Tom Hanks playing Commander Jim Lovell and his wife are throwing a party at their Houston home to celebrate the fact that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are walking on the moon for the very first time. My line happens at the end of the night. The guests have all gone home, there are beer cans strewn all over the backyard, and the Lovells are laying out in their Chase lounges, and Tom Hanks playing Commander Lovell looks at the moon, he looks at his wife, and he says, you know, from now on we live in a world where man has walked on the moon. It wasn't a miracle, we just decided to go. It wasn't a miracle, we just decided to go. My friends, I share this with you for this reason. To understand the power of those words, you have to back up to May 25th, 1961, where John F. Kennedy stands up before a joint session of Congress and later at Rice University and says the words that many of us have heard before, I commit this nation by the end of this decade that we will land a man on the moon and return him safely to the earth. We do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Do you realize? That speech came just 20 days. Just 20 days after Alan Shepard made the first U.S. manned space launch, it lasted all of 15 minutes. We barely had enough technology to go and watch him fall. And yet, to lay out a broad goal where hundreds of thousands of Americans would work tirelessly to create things that had never been created before. At the time John F. Kennedy spoke those words, we had no idea how to do this. None. No one understood anything about Earth orbit rendezvous, lunar orbit rendezvous, or the computing power that would be needed to take us on a journey from the Earth to the moon and back again, and yet, by the end of the decade, we accomplished that goal. It wasn't a miracle. We just decided to go. I share this with you because understanding what young people think, what makes them tick, and how they make decisions is something we can all deep dive into. I think they are an extraordinary, capable group of people who, given the opportunity to see how all of this actually works in a world that needs people at all levels of education and experience to do the extraordinary things that we have to do as communities and as countries across the globe, to do something based on their own unique interests, talents, and abilities. Because one of the things that absolutely plays to the advantage of young people today is they want the pride of their contribution to add to a greater good. How much greater good are we talking about? How much greater good in our narrative as to what's possible, where can you go, how can you get there, and how can you add a piece of yourself to our country, to our community, and to doing something remarkable in your life based on your lifestyle. It doesn't take a miracle to do this. We just have to make the decision to go. I want to thank you very much for the time you've given me. Jason, I'm going to turn it back to you, but if you would kindly give me 60 seconds of feedback, you can shoot this barcode, this QR code, and just give me and I'm happy to share my slides with you if you would like them at that point. My team will send them to you. So thank you. Jason.
Thanks, Mark. Wow, that was great, and I think it also gives us a lot to think about, especially as we think about careers and students and workforce development and everything that's going on. And if you can excuse me just for a second, I'm going to pull up another presentation. When we think about this world in welding, and we think about welding, and that's why we're here today, Mark really helped us set the stage, right? Talking about young people, asking about the why, how do they get to the light at the end of the tunnel? And I think about a lot of things that we do in education, that we've done in education, that I did for 13 years when I taught welding, and it just brings a lot of stuff through. Because there's a lot of things that we're working on here at Lincoln Electric that when you hear a message a different way, you just kind of get that aha moment. And what's interesting is we're using technology today to teach welding in a different way. And we always say, it's one of those cool technologies. It's kind of like a gaming machine. It allows you to experience welding in a different way. But if you just break it down, all that we did is we told them why. We told them why it's not working, or why this didn't happen here, or why that didn't happen there. And so it's really great to hear these messages in different ways. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back to welding and what's kind of going on in welding education, and what we see from the Lincoln Electric perspective, and then what are our challenges? Because I think Mark brings a great message that, are we going to the youth in the right way? Do we have the right message? Do we have the right tone? Because if you think about workforce development, and we think about welding education, we have a large opportunity here. And we're going to dive into some of that. But when we think about welding today, and I love Mark's tree and the progression that you can make in careers throughout welding, that's what a lot of these imagery is here. We think of a welder and a person that's going to physically act with an arc and produce a weld. Similar to what the students and competitors are doing out here in Skill 10 and Skill 42. They're going to use a welder to make a product. But there's much more careers in welding than just being the welder. The welder is just one part of the whole welding industry. But if I'm the welder, what do I get to do within the industry? Anywhere from engineering, working in fabrication, working in the rail. I can work as a mechanic. I can do maintenance. And here, we think even about advanced technologies and what's going on. When I get to oil rigs or furniture making, or I can be a coal miner. And then here, when we start talking about technologies and really understanding the why, or answering the why, it comes down to these technologies down here, to where we're doing things a completely different way today, in which we're going to do things a different way tomorrow. So if you see this image right here, one of the things that we're doing now is instead of just 3D printing small parts, we're 3D printing big things out of metal. And a case in point, Chevron had a challenge in Georgia, and one of their plants went down. And it was going to take months upon months to get a new valve for that plant. So they called up Lincoln Electric and said, hey, it's going to take us months upon months to get this valve. Do you think you can print a new valve for us so we can be up and running again? And we said, absolutely. So we got the valve, we scanned it, we created some different CAD files of that valve, we printed that valve and had them going within a month. That technology didn't exist 2 years ago. To be able to have the capacity to do that. Well, what's going to be up in the next 3 years? What's going to be up in the next 5 years that we're really going to shift to have to start teaching and embracing in schools? And then what do skill development organizations or organizations like World Skills and or Skills USA or Netherlands World Skills, how do we start adapting to these technologies so that we're embracing them? That shows where I can go with these skills and so on. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And a lot of our work that we do and Mark and I, we do a lot of running in the same space. So a lot of the information you're going to see kind of overlaps, and I'm going to go a little faster to get to our discussion point here. But one of the things that we talk about a lot here, and Mark and I, we talk about this quite a lot over coffee, is that back in the day, if I went to a four-year school, if I went to a trade school in 1900, when I graduated from that trade school or that university or college, I was one smart fellow. I knew a lot. And the amount of time that it took for knowledge to increase wasn't really that exponential. So when I graduated from school, I knew more than the average person, and that knowledge would be good for me for the rest of my career. But if I go to 2020, and I look up here in this gap, by the time that I graduate from a college, a university, or a trade school, the knowledge has gone up so far that I am now out of date. I am now almost irrelevant within the marketplace. And if I go back to 3D printing of metal parts, I myself, and I think I'm a pretty intelligent person, I've been around welding quite a few years, there's no way Lincoln Electric is going to let me go 3D print a part. I don't understand the metallurgy. I don't understand the deposition rates around robotics. I don't understand the robotics competencies. I don't understand. There's so many things I don't understand. And when I talk about this knowledge piece right here, that one knowledge component is going to keep me out of that piece of the market. But I do know welding. And that's where we're talking about these transformational shifts that are happening in the market. And we can talk about jobs, we can talk about careers and what they're needed, but I really wanted to focus on this a little bit. What is the need for welders in the United States? And when we just talk about the United States, and the reason we're going to enjoy the international panel, is this is not just centric to the United States. I was just in Ireland a couple weeks ago. They have the same challenge. All across Europe has the same challenge. Netherlands has the same challenge. Latin America has the same challenges. And if you look here, we need over 300,000 welders to fill positions in the United States by 2027. Now here's the challenge. How many welding programs teach and certify students in welding across the United States? And I'm speaking of really just workforce development programs. What do you think the number is? This is where we start to get interactive with the audience. You can actually shout out a number. Anybody?
Not enough.
Not enough. Well, let me tell you, there's over 13,000 school districts across the United States. That'll give you some context for a number. There's only 2,400 schools that teach welding for workforce development and certifications that are government-funded agencies. 2,400. And if we think about the numbers that they're going to graduate out of those programs by 2027, it really becomes a daunting task to say we're going to produce over 300,000 welders by 2027 in the current climate that we're at today. And if we go back to what Mark was talking about attracting and retaining those highly motivated individuals that want to do this line of work, this whole message has to change. How we attract and retain young people into skills development and skills of workforce has to start evolving. And I'll tell you, and then we'll wrap this up pretty quick. We did a study in Kansas about a year ago. And what happened was a school district called us up and they said, we have a fundamental problem. We only have 52 welding booths in our school. However, we have 112 students applying for the program. And I need every student to go through the program. We said, fantastic, we want to help you do it. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stand up a virtual training lab in our school, and we're going to try something different and rotate students through our virtual training lab. And they said, Jason, can you help us out? I said, absolutely, we'll help you out. We'll train your instructors. We'll provide all the assistance. We'll provide some help with curriculum. We'll be out there and we'll step by step this with you. And so when they said, yes, we're in, we went over to Kansas State University and said, look, if this thing works, we want to understand why. Mark, we want to understand why. And if it doesn't work, well, we want to understand why it didn't work as well. Now, here's what we found. We did the study in two different groups. The students that were in the virtual group, that had the virtual assistance with doing through their training program, took the top 4 positions at the state of Kansas welding competition 2 years in a row. So they went and competed and won. The students that were not in the Vertex or the virtual training solution did not even compete. The students that were in the program with the virtual training, 100% job placement pre-graduation. The students not using virtual training had a little more than 25% job placement post-graduation. And one of the main comments that the instructor gave to me is they came back and said, you know, Jason, when those kids, they came to me and said, you know, when I weld on the Vertex and I go back to the booth, it's just like, bam, I got it. And I thought, what the heck is going on? Because we saved money, we saved time, we did a whole bunch of things faster. But at the end of the day, what is going on in that training program where they excelled to the top and they took the top positions at the state welding competition? They had higher rates of job placement and they all succeeded more in the training program. Well, if you listen about what Mark said, they got the why. Their confidence went through the roof when they used some type of training aid that gave them the why. That gave them that little trophy every day and said, here you go. You're doing good, you're learning, you're earning your way, and you're going to be better tomorrow. And those students that participated in a different training path, they took off, and it was an unbelievable result that they had in Kansas. And I think there's no challenges with our competencies. There's no challenge with what we teach in development. A lot of times it's the way we deliver it and how we engage the students. And so, you know, Mark, I do appreciate your comments today. I think they were fantastic. And now what I'd like to do is, we've kind of set the frame and kind of set the tone for the day, but I'd like to introduce our panels. Because we have a highly interactive panel, and guys, this truly is going to be a discussion. I want some interaction from the audience. The phones are closed. I'm sorry, all those out there around the world watching today. The phones are closed, but we'll take questions another time. But who I'd like to introduce right now is David Hoey. David Hoey is the CEO of World Skills, a good friend to us and a good friend to Lincoln, and has been in the space of skills development for a long time. And we welcome David Hoey to the stage. Next, I'd ask Rick Polanin to come forward. Rick Glannon is a president of AWS, also an instructor of welding, and I think, did they invent SMAW when you started teaching?
After.
After, yeah, it was after. And another thing about Rick Glannon was also one of the co-leaders for developing a Weld Ed in the United States. And Weld Ed is really taking a leadership position in the direction of welding education in the United States with the American Welding Society. So Rick Glannon. And then we also have Shelley Travis. Shelley Travis is the Executive Director for Skills USA, formerly part of the Tennessee CTE program. And then we have our friend, Eric Vanderswan from the Netherlands, CEO of World Skills Netherlands. And then lastly, we have Miss Dorothy Schmid. Dorothy is the Business Development Manager for the International Space and Education with Lincoln Electric. So the way that is not the right slide to have mine. I do so, we're going to do this right now. There we go. So, and also Mark first. Sorry. So, the way that this is going to work, we're going to ask a series of questions to our panelists, and we're also going to open it up to the audience. And with the audience, we have a microphone that we can pass around. So when you have questions, we are live streaming. So to pick up the audio, we'd ask you that you use the microphone. So David, one of the things that we talked about this week while we were here is a lot about excellence and competence, right? What is the difference between excellence and competence, and what is the relationship to world skills and really what we're driving with world skills and World Skills Special Edition 2022?
Yeah, turn your mics on, by the way. Thank you.
All right. I think we talk about skills excellence, world skills inspiring skills excellence. If you look at vocational education and training around the world, it's competency based. You're either not yet competent or you're competent. And that's a threshold that you cross in terms of no matter what skill, technology, sector, etc. But if you're employing people, the real question is what's the difference between competence and excellence? And how do you measure that? And obviously here around skills competitions, we found around the world, it's not just a monopoly held by World Skills, but skills competitions are the only thing that will do that. Because, I'll give you an analogy of how it works with say, education, kids, etc. If we go to, let's say we're playing sport, soccer, right? So if we're in the backyard playing soccer, we go through the motions to prove that we've listened enough in class to the coach and we can play soccer. But if you said to me, first 1 to 5 wins, you turn it into a fun environment. And then all of a sudden, everything you've learnt starts kicking in there, so you get more competitive and you drive skills up. And so when we look at excellence and what we do in skills competitions, the key element is that you don't just see the competitors here who win the gold medals, silver medals, etc. Underneath them is that pyramid. The more people get in, the higher you can rise. Cream rises to the top. And so if we look at the performance here around excellence and how we benchmark it around the world, everyone has a competency, so you can compare, the US system to the Brazilian system to the Australian system, etc. Maybe a world with a certain, percentage engagement of the medal, etc. But I'll give an example. Let's pick one. Let's say Brazil, Senai, part of the CNI, Confederation of National Industries, about 4.5 million students in their vocational schools. They teach welding. We'll stick with welding. And obviously National Qualification Framework, what is the competence that they've all got to achieve to be able to get a ticket to go into Brazilian industry, etc. But along the way, they'll also, at some point in their apprenticeship, get them to do the test project from World Skills. Because the key piece of intellectual property we provide afterwards is the test project and the marking scheme. And so every kid doing welding in Brazil at the Senai schools would do the test project, the same as what they're doing out here. And we provide all the marking results from out here after the competition. Who got gold, medallions of excellence in the top 50%. So all the teachers in Brazil can then look at their cohort of students and compare our top student, maybe on average to World Schools, our top student maybe not even getting a medal at World Schools. And this provides this benchmarking, and then it's inspiring beyond just this common threshold that everyone's working towards to, okay, we've got to put more effort into our system to inspire more excellence. And then we have a lot of networking learning from the specialist companies, etc. So to us, there's a big difference between competence, which is just that threshold you cross, and inspiring skills excellence. Hopefully that gives it an insight.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. And interesting enough, bringing the World Skills Competition here to the United States, there has been a lot of discussion this week about excellence and what should we be doing with our skills development events in the United States, and how do we keep raising the bar with that to drive the excellence in our students. Now, Rick, I'm going to go to you. One of the things that we do drive in our programs, and one of the things we do use to measure competence and or some excellence, is we use certifications. What is the future of certifications, and how do governing bodies or societies work with skills development organizations like World Skills and or Skills USA to ensure relevance of the certifications to the workforce development path?
I'll try. I don't have the nice accent that David has, and I'll try to talk at 140 words a minute if I possibly can. But first of all, let me say that certainly before one takes a certification test, they need to be qualified, and that qualification is where World Skills, National Skills has a large impact on our students. The qualification portion of the certification process requires that they really understand the welding processes so that they can be successful in completing the certification test. One of the things we all know, those of us who've taken certification tests all know, is that you really are able to pass that test on that particular day. It doesn't really assure that you are completely a qualified welder if you simply take the certification test. Therefore, the qualification prior to taking that test becomes very, very important. I think by having a standard type of testing or competition that World Skills provides, National Skills, and as it trickles down into the local skills, provides that qualification for those students to be successful at completing certification tests. And we all also know that certification is is an attempt to assure the health and safety of the citizens of the world, and therefore those certifications are completely have a foundation completely in the qualification process, and certainly skills efforts that are found at all levels from World Skills all the way through the local skills provides us with that qualification piece.
Yeah, thanks. And Shelley, you know, being the executive director for Skills USA, how does Skills USA and organizations like yours, how do you guys help and address workforce challenges in this, or the skills awareness, not the skills gap, but the skills awareness, as what Mark might refer to, and in these worlds?
Absolutely. Well, we really do help our students find their why. I think that really resonated with me when Mark said that earlier. At Skills USA, we serve over 330,000 student and teacher members nationwide in over 130 different skill occupational areas in middle schools, high schools, and college post-secondary institutions nationwide in all 50 states, 2 territories, as well as DC. And really, one of those areas that we work in, I had one of our board of directors members actually handed everyone the Skills USA framework and a framework pin as a reminder when you go back. But one of those pieces is skills development. So at Skills USA, we really do work to create a career-ready talent pipeline And by doing that, we help our students focus on their framework, what we call our Skills USA framework skills, and that difference for our students in working on their personal skills, their workplace skills, and their technical skills that were grounded in academics. Those skills that our employer partners tell us that we need, that the workforce needs, but many times our students entering the workforce are lacking in those areas. So we concentrate in all of our programming on those 17 essential elements that our partners have told us that they need. And really create and give our students the opportunity to succeed in the workforce, and by letting our partners know that our students are receiving this consistently and applied consistently across. So our skill development, but then also creating awareness and really elevating the skilled trades in the United States. So in many ways we do this through our recognition opportunities, through opportunities such as our competitions that you see on display here, in really elevating and creating awareness for that. Many times we found in our research that our students make the decision about what they don't want to do many times before they decide what they do want to do with the rest of their life, like you were saying earlier. And if their parents and their peers and their realms of influence do not understand the opportunities that are available to them, that's one of the ways that we have such an opportunity to really start at an early age in our elementary schools and our middle schools here in the United States, and making sure that not only are students aware of what is available for them, but also that we are giving them the opportunities in really age-appropriate ways to explore these careers so that they can really see that roadmap and what is available to them. Also elevating these opportunities through recognition programs. I mentioned our competitions. But also in other recognition programs such as our Skills USA Signing Day and events like that that really elevate our skilled trades and saying that this is a career of choice, not a career of last resort for our students. Providing our students with leadership opportunities so that they can shine as well. Many of you saw on stage our national post-secondary president, Katahdin, actually presenting and speaking. Giving our students voices are so important. That generation will tell us what they want in the workplace, and we need to listen to them as well. So at Skills USA, we are a career technical student organization in the United States, and we give our students the opportunity to lead within our organization as well. And finally, I think the opportunity for community service to really have our students connect to something that is larger than themselves through the skilled trades as well, seeing that there is something bigger out there for them as well. So providing these opportunities, and I think the most important part in solving the skills gap and that the workforce solutions that we are really looking for in our skills organizations is the importance of that connection between education and industry. We really are that conduit that connects our students, our teachers, to the needs of the workforce through the standards we set, through the marking, and through all of our activities that we do each and every day. So please take those framework cards that you have, and as a reminder of the Skills USA difference and that pipeline that we create with our future workforce. One last thing that I would say is that we create a career-ready talent pipeline. We graduate over 100,000 students annually with those skills. So that Skills USA difference, our employers know when they see that on a resume that the students have been through this program and that they have those skills coming out. And I think that is so important for our workforce. And the students that are involved in these organizations, we can see through the research, much like what you were talking about, Jason, that our students that are involved with Skills USA and technical education, not only do they graduate at a higher rate than their peers, both in secondary and post-secondary, but their placement opportunities are higher, and also their satisfaction is higher, both the employer and the student. So really that Skills USA difference in making sure that our students know their why early on, you can see in the workforce.
Great, thank you. And you can see that, you know, starting off with the excellence and at the world skills level, and then as we drive into certifications that help build that excellence. In the United States, we use a lot of career and tech ed centers and schools, community colleges that develop that talent. But internationally, apprenticeship programs are used quite extensively to help develop that talent pipeline that the workforce needs. So Eric, how does Netherlands World Skills work within apprenticeship programs to address challenges and attract young people into the skilled trades and into the workforce?
Well, first of all, we don't have the numbers as here in the US, of course, but we have a network of 99% of all the colleges in the Netherlands. And what we do, we just use this to showcase how important it is to show their talents and how important vocational education and training is, not only for industry, but also for themselves, for their future. It's not what you said, it's their own choice to be a craftsman or to be a good professional. So what we do is we also try to narrow the gap between education and industry. Because what we see is that sometimes innovation is hard to teach in colleges. So we help building our test projects in the Netherlands with industry and education. So we sit down and we talk about, okay, what do we want to see in a professional? What do we want to see if we want somebody is excellence? Or what do we want to see if we want to motivate a student to be the best version of himself or herself? So that's how we develop our programs. And this helps to teach the students what their skills are and what their future can be. And we're growing from a couple of 10,000 till 60,000 a year in the Netherlands. So we're growing, and thanks to the business partners, but also education, we're helping to close the gap between education and industry.
And when you guys have events, one of the things that's always impressed me about World Skills, Skills USA, and when we go to Netherlands Skills and such, can you talk about how you work with schools in local areas to attract schools to bring students in so they can witness those skills and see what's going on so that they start to think about that could be me one day?
Yeah, we've got a whole program that runs for a year. So we make test projects for a selection in their school. So you go from their school champion to the semifinals to the finals in the Netherlands, and that's a 3-day event. It's about 12,000 students from all over the world. We have social media, we've got big programs, we've got also industries that helps train the teachers as well. So if you bring in innovation into the classroom, we sometimes have to teach the teachers as well. So that's what we do, and what we see is that the students that are enrolling are getting higher and higher every year, because also the teachers say, okay, this is a win-win for me as well. It's not only for my student, but okay, I can also teach something about, for example, electrification in automotive. Because that's something that's sometimes difficult to teach in colleges, because sometimes it's very expensive to have it in the classroom. So that's how we work with teachers and schools, and well, the numbers are going up, and well, that's very fortunate.
Right, no, thank you. And Dorothy, one of the things that Lincoln Electric and we enjoy doing around the world is engaging with Netherlands Skills, engaging with Skills USA and World Skills. But what are some of the things that Lincoln's doing to help address some of these with our partners around the world in this area?
Well, like you said, and I think this year is actually a good experience and a good example for what we in Lincoln are doing when it comes to addressing the needs of new attractive welders, as well as being part of setting the awareness of how important it is to become a welder, and also spreading out the message that it is cool to be a welder. I think using an event like this one does not only help Lincoln, it helps us all all of us who are sitting here. For me especially, it is absolutely nice being involved in all those organizations and having the opportunity in Lincoln really to use those arms, making welding attractive. On the other hand, it is also very important to say that Lincoln, we are also focusing not only on the standard welder. So what we are also focusing on, and this is thankful on a big team behind here in the education department, we are able to concentrate and really spread out the message that a welder is not a welder anymore, that Lincoln Electric itself, we are concentrating in so many different segments in the world in welding. And I think this is what, when it comes back to how do we attract the young people to this, we are also using a lot of social media outside in the market. We have our rare models, which Lincoln Electric is able to use in social media, as we are going on Instagram as influencers, and all those people, they help us to create the message that being part in the manufacturing world without kind of studying, with really doing an apprenticeship like you do in the European world or like here in the US world, really training up in schools like Lincoln, that this is nothing bad. At least it's something wonderful, and this really helps us. And I'm thinking that it's going better and better, and as we are more focusing in a team out of organizations together with industry and government and all those, we will be successful to switch that and building trust in trades again.
Thank you. And Mark, you know, I'm going to throw you a softball. So when we talk a lot in the U.S., we've always talked a lot about skills versus degrees. Do you think it's an and or do you think, what do you think about the difference between skills and degrees, and where are we headed down this path?
I think we're in the early stages of moving to a skills-based hiring model in America as opposed to a degree-based model. In fact, in what I write in Forbes and what I've been speaking about around North America, a lot of my audiences are economic development and employers and educators and superintendents, et cetera. And I'm talking about how we have to recognize that, right now we have a thing in America called that we're making kids college and career ready. It came down from the federal government years ago, and it has taken such a root in America that there are school districts that's their tagline. ABC School District, we're making kids college and career ready. And whereas I think it's a fantastic phrase, you know, it seems noble, seems like low-hanging fruit, like if we're going to do something, of course we should be doing that. But I was invited to speak at Harvard University some time ago, and I talked to an esteemed audience. I said, I don't think we should be making kids college and career ready in this country. I think we should be making them career ready, period. Sure, all kinds of wonderful careers and occupations go through 4-year university degrees and baccalaureates, masters, PhDs, MDs, JDs. But there's also, and if what you want to do in life requires that, I think you need to invest wisely, go with passion, go with purpose, but make sure you get it done. There's also wonderful careers and occupations through 2-year associate's degree at community and technical colleges. There's also wonderful careers and occupations through certifications and licensures and apprenticeships in the military. Why, with so many ways to be successful in the world today, did we pick one of those ways and put it in the phrase? Because by putting it in the phrase, we've said everything else is an also-ran. Everything else is second best. And this is what's gotten us a skills gap of over 11 million in just this country alone. And so in closing the awareness gap, there's a cultural shift in the paradigm that has to take place. We have to recognize that there are lots of ways to be successful. And whereas you may start with certifications or an apprenticeship or licensure or military, et cetera, that doesn't mean that you're done. You're not making that decision for life. You're making a for now decision to take that and then leverage where do you want to go from there. And so when I speak to parents and communities and we talk about college degrees versus certifications, I don't think it's an either or. I think everything needs to be on the table. And I think that when you look at the breadth of what's possible in this country and around the world, there's extraordinary things that young people can do. But I think we've turned off a large number of young people who think if they don't get a 4-year degree that somehow their life isn't going to amount to what someone else's life is going to be. And that's not true, because the number of people going off to get a degree and finishing are really bad. I mean, in Alaska, the numbers I talked about, I just got back from Anchorage, Alaska last night, and I did 5 keynote speeches up in Fairbanks and Anchorage, and I did statewide, principals and administrators conference plus career and technical education statewide conference. The numbers in Alaska are that right now only 37% of Alaskan high school kids graduate high school and go to college. That's low. But here's the stat that's a mind blower. 2 out of 3 do not complete a degree in 6 years. If you do the math on all of that, that means between 12 and 13% of Alaskans are going to college and completing in 6 years. That's an extraordinary waste of talent, energy, and time because they're not getting out of it what they think they're putting into it. And they don't, and they're going because we tell them to go. We're making kids college and career ready. You have a great GPA. I've been asking this question in relation to a lot of organizations around the country is, why do we assume that someone with a 4.4 grade point average should go to college? We assume it. We assume because someone is a high academic achiever, like of course, you should go on to college. Why? So just to wrap up this particular answer, I was called by a community college system here in the state of Ohio because they heard that I'm working with regional collectives and economic development and school districts and I'm trying to bring people together for the pipelines. And they called me and they said, Mark, 13 of our school districts that feed us, we have recognized that 70% of kids do not go to a 4-year degree because, by the way, young people today are debt averse. They don't want the debt associated with going. So they're being better consumers of education and training. And so we're trying as a community college now to create all the all the things that they need to do. And I said, hold up a minute. I said, I fear that you're about to make the 50-year mistake we've been making in the opposite direction. You're assuming that 70% of young people today aren't going to a 4-year degree, therefore they need something else, which may or may not be true, it's up to the individual. I said, but I will guarantee you with certainty that there is a percentage of that 70% who you say are not going to college that if they knew why they were going, probably should go, based on what they're ultimately going to want to do in life. And the 30% that you say are going off to a 4-year degree and beyond are going largely because they're probably high academic achievers. And I can guarantee you with certainty that there's a large percentage of that group that probably have no business going to a 4-year university and beyond. We have to stop thinking in this country and around the world in 70, 30s, 60s, 40s, 50s, 50s and start thinking 100%. We have to start talking to people in 100%. Every young person today should see every option and opportunity on the line and choose the one that is most applicable to them. That's where this thing turns around culturally.
Right. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any questions out from the audience?
I have one. I probably need a mic, do I?
It's right over here.
Just toss.
It's coming, Sue.
Thank you. It's no surprise, people who know me. My name is Sue. I'm from Canada, but I'm here volunteering with World Skills as a skill advisor. I always ask why. I thought I'd be the first one. So my question's to Jason, because research, I always find it's in the details where you're finding out what is it that you're really exploring. So your numbers were astounding to me when I looked at the amount of students who went through taking a traditional programming versus virtual. And I wanted to understand, was the virtual component a blended type? So you would learn virtually, but you would still apply that within the classroom so that you had the best of both. And that question just aligns with a lot of youth today, like technology, not like people my age where we're somewhat frightened. So that emerging technology, if you can apply that, it made perfect sense to me. But the numbers were so, 75% difference, it frightened me. So if you could help me answer that one, I'll be happy.
Thank you, Sue. It was a blended approach that was used. The students and what they did for the population, they had to use both the virtual lab and the live welding lab simultaneously throughout their program. But what happened was in the study, and this comes from the qualitative side through the interviewing of the students, what happened was, and what I didn't really understand, is when my kids were growing up, everybody got a trophy. Everybody got a trophy for playing soccer. Everybody got a trophy for playing t-ball. But they all became winners at the end of the day. And what happened with these students is that when they used technology to learn, when I'm teaching welding and I have David do his first weld, and David brings me back his first weld, and I said, well, sorry, David, yeah, you didn't pass. You failed. Go back to the booth and do it again. And so David goes back and he does it again, and he comes back and he's even more proud of himself because he did a little bit better. But I looked at him again and I said, you know what, I'm sorry, David. You failed. It's not going to pass. It's not going to work. You got to slow down, all right? Just slow down this time. Go do it again. And he comes back and I said, David, I don't know why you didn't listen to me last time. You got to slow down. And so what we just keep hammering on these students. But what the students found when they used technology is they were interacting with the technology and learning on their own at their own pace. And so if they failed at one part or they got lower scores at one part, they can turn on an action cue. They can look up why did that happen, or why is that going on, or what effect did it have on the weld. And they knew then to slow down. They knew then to change an angle. They didn't have to go back to the teacher and say, what did I do wrong? Help coach me. Which then the student, now learning on their own, starts to build confidence, because that confidence comes from their ability to find success and their ability to grow as a learner. And those are the things that, and I appreciate Mark's conversation today, but that's, I think, what we're missing, is that we need to be building that confidence and turning these students into learners that want to learn and engage, and we need to find technologies to help us do that.
Thank you.
Great question.
I have more. People don't be quiet.
Here's one in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Paulina Fox. I'm with National Coalition of Certification Centers. My question to you is, with the need for welders comes a need for welding educators. So how do we find and or create more welding educators to teach our future welders and set them up for success?
Rick, that's your question.
We're looking my way, I guess. That becomes a very difficult question. We haven't been able to attract as many instructors into career and technical education as we would like through the last many years. And there are so many reasons for that. It becomes very difficult to pinpoint one, but certainly part of that has to do with what the salary is or the lifestyle will be after they complete that degree. Certainly there's not the same kind of money that you can make in education that you can make in a lot of other areas. But what I will say is that we at the National Center for Education, Welding Education and Training have tried to do our part in developing some professional development courses that we offer actually for free because of funding from the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation will allow instructors to attend our courses. We'll pay for the lodging and have some nominal fee for 40 hours worth of training. The instructors simply have to get to the location. And so we've tried to improve education, welding education, through that program. Certainly the AWS does similar things. We allow, at my community college, we allow for instructors within our area to come to our college to learn from the instructors within our college as well, to take that information back to their students. So there are a lot of ways to try to improve education within welding. The problem is really how to attract them initially. So the bad thing, and I won't go on much, but I will say the bad thing is that a lot of folks who have been welders for a very long time, I can't say bad, the perhaps difficult thing is to take folks who've been in welding for a very long time and decide that they want to give something back, but they don't really understand how people learn. And therefore, what we would like to do as educators, especially with WeldEd and AWS, is to provide some opportunity for those folks who are coming back to teach other people about how people learn, how people are motivated, how to organize lessons and those types of things that are very important. So I'd like to finally make a distinction between education and training, so we have to look at that carefully. So certainly in a lot of the courses that I teach, especially for the companies within the local area, they will ask for specific training, and it's a kind of a short-term thing that we would, as instructors, would like to be very directive and tell them, here's the way you make the welds, because you have to pass a certification test. We want to get you prepared to take those types of tests. The flip side of that is we'd like to have all of those new folks who are coming into welding education understand that education is a broader type of situation where we like to provide both the welding skill but also behavioral skill, and also the knowledge skill, the cognitive skill as well. And so there's a difference between those areas. And so some folks are just interested in providing training. That's really not what we would like to do all the time in education and training. Therefore, there are some other things we'd like to teach as well.
I would love to add just one thing to your question, which I thought was outstanding, is not only do we need to find new teachers, we have to find ways to keep the ones we already have. My biggest concern is losing the incredible teachers we have teaching welding and any other discipline and skill as well, because education has become a very difficult path today. A lot of teachers are talking other people out of becoming teachers, and this is part of the crisis that is developing in America. So your question is outstanding. I just want to tack onto that. We have to find ways to keep the ones we already have.
Jason, if I may, I think that's a really great opportunity that we have in our skill organizations as well, is actually asking why and preparing our future workforce for the why. Listening to our next generation, I think really, and storytelling about the opportunities in welding education and what it means and what it can mean to the life of not only that student, but also your community and your state, if you're here, your nation, and our world, and really storytell about those advisors. If you ask one of my students who was the one most important person in not only their choice, but also their success, it is their instructor, that expert that has worked with them, their passion. And I have really seen, I've been in education and in technical education for over 20 years, I have seen the difference of being involved in a skills organization and what it means to that instructor. I've seen really good instructors become great instructors through a skills organization. I've also seen their passion refueled and ignited through a skills organization, because you have the opportunity to not only pass along something that you are passionate about, but make an impact in someone else's life, to see them succeed and hopefully see them on that stage, on the state or the national or the world level. And so I think through storytelling, through skills organizations, we also have an opportunity not only to attract people, but also to retain them as well, because that's something that we do a very good job of, is providing professional development for our instructors, not necessarily that welding skill, but that classroom management, making sure they have the confidence that they need in the classroom. And so I think that's a very important role that we can play in the skills organization, is making sure that we can not only attract, but retain. And a huge part of that is stopping to listen about what our future workforce needs. Education offers many of those opportunities, both in culture and work and in benefits in education, and we have to be able to tell that story so that so the workforce knows about the opportunities in welding education.
David?
I'm not from here, as you probably gathered. But just listening, it sparks all these thoughts about what we see around the world working. And, you know, the comment about every parent wants their kid to go to university and whatever, and somehow, if you haven't gone to university, you've failed. One of my favorite cartoons, you guys know the Wizard of Id? Right? And so the Wizard of Id is there meeting one of his subjects, and he said, how many kids have you got? He got 4. He said, what do they do? And I said, well, one's a doctor, one's an engineer, and one's a lawyer. I said, well, what about the 4th one? I said, oh, he's a plumber. He said, is there a problem with that? He said, hell no, he put the other 3 through university. and so we've got to change people's perceptions. And this challenge we see around the world is every country has a skills shortage. You can also change that narrative around that they got a skills mismatch, because people have got some skills, but they're not ready for what the workforce wants. You know, the whole thing around vocational education and training is workforce readiness. And I often get asked, like, what, in the countries that do have growth in terms of uptake of skills, etc. And I think it's this relationship, the 3 main stakeholders, education, industry, and government. They don't all play the same role, but they're all part of the solution. And in the countries around the world, it works really well. And so to me, if we look at, we're here obviously with a focus on skills competitions, I'd throw the challenge out to the US to somehow engage more of how these skills competitions work around the world. I'll give you an example. Finland hosted the competition years ago. They turned it into a skills festival. So inside the workshops, we're assessing excellence, benchmarking for all the members around the world. Outside, engaging with the companies, industry, and the educators, it was a skills festival. To young people, who's the greatest influence on their career choice? Their parents. And who are the most ignorant? They would know what a lot of these new technologies and new industries and those are, but somehow they suppress the dream. Because as Mark says, when you know why, the how is very easy, you just got to find the people. So Finland, go back to that story, the government gave every kid in Finland a train ticket to the World Skills Competition in a backpack. And in the backpack was the story about all the skills. And it wasn't, go to this community college, do 200 hours, be good at maths, physics, science, and you'll become a welder. It was, here's Marty, he's representing Finland in welding. He loves rock climbing, he loves this, etc. Young kids relate to young kids. They found that there was about 120,000 people visited the competition over the 4 days. You turn up and there's this great navigation guide, follow the red feed if you're interested in construction, follow the blue feed, the blue feed if you're interested in hospitality or whatever. 3 years later, the ministry came back and reported at our General Assembly that increased vocational education entry from 36% to 44%. Skills competitions work. And then the companies got involved around every skill. We had try a skill, as we call it, try a trade, have a go, industry advice and guidance. And so I throw the challenge out is how do you get education, industry and government to work together, create career expos around the world, around the country. And again, career expo, what do you call them in the country here? Careers advisors. How current are they with the technologies and opportunities of the future? So a lot of the countries engage them in this program, and it's a biennial upskilling of what it is. So I think there's solutions out there. We just got to get everyone singing and dancing at the same time for the same outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we've done a lot of work with World Skills. We've done a lot of work in Euro Skills, Netherlands, and everywhere. But you think about Africa, right? And we're skilling up in Africa. And what is the catalyst to skilling up in Africa? Well, we're helping develop an Africa World Skills Organization and a skills development organization. And it all starts with that competition to get the standards up that raises the bar for excellence, and teachers come in and see, oh, well, look, David's students did a lot better than I did. I gotta figure out what David's doing over there, right? And or did they teach better? Or did they do this? Or did they do that? And that friendly competition is pretty exciting. One thing I was thinking about, and to kind of tie some of those questions together before, we talked a lot about excellence. I had Rick talk a little bit about certifications. We talked a little bit about how student development or career development organizations, skills development organizations make a difference. But something that's been discussed on the world stage is something about a skills passport. And where a skills passport can not only demonstrate excellence, but it can also demonstrate the competence and the skills that the students have and how they can then go and participate in the workforce. So I'm just going to throw that out to the panel, but when we think about certifications, we think about excellence, we think about these different organizations, Do we need to think about how we recognize excellence and career readiness with students in a different way that brings relevance to both sides of the table?
I'll kind of start with that, and as Mark pointed out, I think there is a tipping point at this juncture that we have an opportunity to look at degrees over skills. And I think in the past in the United States, what we've done is we've looked at degrees rather than skills. I think what we don't do very well is to provide some sort of portable credential. So I talked about certification, but I can tell you that most of the students that I discourage certification, and the reason is that unless they have an opportunity to get a job because they have a specific certification, the company that they're going to will require them to take another test. And that secondary test will prove whether or not they'll get employed. Now there are some organizations that provide more portable credentials, such as Common Art. Boilermakers use Common Art. UA uses a variety of different types of ways to do that as well. But that's one of the problems that we have. We don't have that portability. And a passport would be a good idea if you can get people to accept the passport throughout the world. And what I'll also say is that I'd be remiss in not saying, look, all of the major manufacturers, especially this red one here, provide a lot of help to all of the welding education throughout the world. And certainly their influence on how those passports or how that portability will be approached becomes very important to all of us. So, those types of things are the hurdles that we need to overcome. That portability one is the one that I've seen through my career that is always difficult to overcome.
Eric?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. I read a quote, I think it was Elon Musk. He said, "I don't hire skills, I hire eagerness, because I can teach them skills." And what we see in the Netherlands, for example, we have this discussion about the passport as well, but you see a kind of a group that is against it because they still believe in the old mindset, having a diploma, having a certificate instead of a passport. So that's something we would like to promote. But still, it's for the, well, let's say elderly people. My old teachers, I learned a lot from them, but they're still thinking in this different paradigm. So I'm in favor of it, but I think it's somewhere somehow a challenge to get it done.
Right. David?
Yeah, I think we get asked a lot about this, about the transferability, the transportability of skills. And if you do a qualification in this country, will you be recognised in another country? And I think it's that extension of skills into knowledge and experience as well, because a lot of people have got technical skills, but have they got those transversal skills like communication, problem solving, and those sorts of things? So, in fact, for every competition we're running around in the world at the moment, at the end of that competition, when we award the medals to the competitors, we're also sending out digital badging. And that's the start of this platform for acknowledgement and understanding of skill sets as opposed to a qualification. And what we're seeing in a lot of countries, they're wanting to employ a person as a particular skill set rather than a qualification, etc. And these digital badges can come together in a wallet or portfolio to look at, that person has exactly what I need. Being digital, it can be searched on a database and those sorts of things. So I think there's a lot of work. We've been involved with the United Nations. UNESCO is looking at a world reference level. So there are ways that we can compare one country to another through their national qualification, the ISCAT, or in the US here, the ONET for occupational standards. So there's all this, it's all about recognition across different countries. So there's a lot of work going on. I think there's an exciting future there, but it comes back to that skills, knowledge, experience. How do you benchmark it? How do you quantify it to be able to learn? And they are three different things, aren't they? Right. Knowledge and experience. In fact, there's we often get asked that because what's the difference between knowledge and experience? Knowledge is knowing that tomatoes are fruit, and experience is knowing not to put it in the fruit salad. And so there's a lot of that discussion around, if I've got these three, how do I understand the relationship when I go into applying for jobs, whatever.
Great. Another question from the audience?
I have lots, but I don't want to monopolize.
Don?
Thank you. Yeah, Don Stickle here from Caterpillar, US based. So one of the things I think that we're struggling with is the branding of welding and what it does. So I've attempted to bring awareness in my local community. And just not long ago, a couple kids raised their hand and said, hey, my grandpa lost his finger working in manufacturing. I knew somebody else that got hurt. So we have this particular stigma around our skill. I guess any thoughts in how we can rebrand what welding is?
I'll start with that one, and so, Don, I'm gonna tell you what, that one's gonna be really, really tough, because for all of us who have been welders at one time in our lives, and all of us who are out in shops pretty much every day, not every day for me now because I'm traveling, but there's still a tough job to be done if you're a welding operator. So if you're welding with 52 thousandths diameter wire in the middle of the summer, it's still a hot job, and we're not changing that because we still need welders. What we can do is to provide those welders with the best comfort and PPE, as personal protective equipment, as possible to prevent any type of injury, and have a series of safety programs that allow us to do that. But it's damn hard work, and for those folks who don't believe that, then they haven't welded any place with large diameter wires or climbing around on different pieces of equipment. So that becomes a tough one. Now, we can certainly say that there is a satisfying experience, because you're actually building something, you're doing something that requires resourcefulness. You have to work as a team oftentimes. There's a lot of those other things that we can point out that are benefits. And some of the greatest feelings that I have about the folks that I work with was when I was actually a welder working as a team. So those types of things I think we can promote. I think we'll have a hard time selling that welding is not still a fairly hot, difficult job. So that's the one that makes it tough. We're not going to Google and playing ping pong at lunch and doing those kinds of things. So, I think there needs to be some reality in that as well.
I don't know, I'll take that one on too, but I think we have to change the image in the schools first too. I think there's a lot of classrooms that aren't places where students want to be. There's not a lot of environments where students want to be, that mom and dads want to send a student to. If you look at manufacturing, we can take you across the road to our manufacturing facility here in Lincoln Electric. It's a much brighter, safer, interactive workspace than it's ever been before. One is we have to address the workforce challenge. We have to attract people into our own manufacturing facility. Two, we have to make it a place that people want to be. And if people don't want to be there, they're not going to come work there. And I think when we talk about welding education, I've talked to educators all around the world. One of the first things we tell some teachers is back the dumpster up. We need to throw 90% away and start over and paint the walls. And if you look in this space, even just in this room, it's got bright colors, it's different feel, especially when you come in the Welding Technology Training Center, and that was done on purpose. That the colors were chosen on purpose, that the feel of the building was chosen on purpose, because we want people to come in and say, I like being here, I want to be here, I want to be engaged here. And I think that's where we got to start. Manufacturing is already doing it because they need to attract people. So it's a multi-pronged approach, not a one-hit wonder here. Yes, Mark?
I would also focus that it's a means to an end. I think we tend to focus on the actual welding, which I think is critical, but what does welding accomplish? And young people today want the pride of their contribution to add to a greater good, and I think if I were rebranding welding today, I would say, what is the outcome of doing this work? And where does this fit in the importance of our society, our culture, et cetera? I would focus on that all day long. Yes, there's Sparks, and there are kids who want to be a part of Sparks. I mean, you know, welding marketing, I think, is fun because I help a lot of schools across America do that. And the first thing we do is put a picture of someone with Sparks. You know, business education would love to have Sparks, they don't. But I think you have to look beyond it, that it's a means to an end, and it's an art form. And I don't mean necessarily that you're welding art, though you can do that. I think it's an art form to do it well, and the people who are attracted to that, I think, want to do what welding does, and I think you need to focus on that.
Good question. Any more questions? Well, guys, it's been an outstanding panel and a great discussion. I think, you know, this warrants, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things that we do together, but I can tell you that through the World Skills movement and with all the business partners in World Skills and getting down to Skills USA and Netherlands World Skills, I can tell you that we're all working together. And there's a lot of commonality, and I've heard a lot of discussions this week about, well, what can this organization do to help this organization, and how can these schools help these schools? So I really look forward to more events like this. I look forward to Lincoln hosting more international welding competitions like this. And I thank all of our panelists today for the interaction. And Mark, thank you for the keynote address. It was timely, well delivered, and thank you everybody for participating, and thank you everybody for coming.